Okay, so great. So the main thing that I wanted to discuss today is the usage of testimonials, and testimonials again. If you're not too familiar with them, can this be a review or a customer actually speaking about the brand or the product themselves? You will also learn a bit about edit and proofreading tips, which are usually pretty straightforward, but again, small mistakes if you're working alone can pile up. And then again, of course, generating new ideas for your content. Okay. And also, international audiences with translation purposes is always good. And number five is an interesting one, but this one as well. The majority of the time, if you're making your brand and stuff like that as well, at least in my experience too, it's usually you doing the writing and stuff as well. But if you're able to hire a copywriter or someone to do your writing, there's a lot of ways that you can brief them on what's going on. Cool. And I can link that video in the chat here and also in the forum. Let's see here. Great. So testimonials as well are just real recommendations from the real customer, and testimonials are probably some of the best marketing content you can have. Right? These can act as little ads for products and services, and sometimes most businesses don't publicly share these, but you can kind of think of a if you go to an Amazon page and then you scroll down a little bit on a product, it's just full of reviews, right? And usually, if you see a lot of negative reviews, you're not going to get the product because at the end of the day, you're going to see what other people are experiencing and then base your buying decision off of that. So we want to make sure that while you don't want to just share every review ever, like if there's a bunch of mean ones or anything, there's good ways to share off testimonials to increase your brand. Now, there's what you can do here, and one of the most important ones as well is asking for a short testimonial and letting them know how you're going to use it. Most of the time, people won't mind reviewing or saying their experience, but they're not going to initiate that phase, right? Most people, when you buy a product, won't go out of their way to say something like, "Oh, Can I write a review for you guys on this product?" Usually, they want to be asked to write the review, or if they're asked to write the review, they can say yes or no. Most of the time, or you might have customers that don't want to write a review, but asking doesn't hurt, and it's literally only an extra sentence that you need to ask them, so it shouldn't take too long to do it. But make sure that you don't feel afraid to ask a customer to write a testimonial, and then of course, because they're writing it, they'll understand that it's going to be shared. Usually, you don't write a review for this single purpose. But of course, make sure that you feel that you realize that you're able to review and share these. You can send them across your website, see them in your website, put them around or in your promotional material, and of course, show it relevant to content that you're delivering. So let me really quickly just pull up a small example. Great. So now, for instance, if you're making a site or an app, you might sometimes, if the user is using it for a while, have I think a few of you might have experienced it too. Have you ever been using an app on your phone and then it pops up that says, please review us on the App Store? What they're asking for is essentially a testimonial that you can provide. Hi, Nerd. Welcome, morning. And essentially, what they're going to be asking is, can you please share a review so that we can put it onto our website, essentially. And then if you see whenever you download an app on like the Google Play Store or on the App Store, there's a bunch of reviews for that app that are underneath the download button. But as you can see here, I recommend to use Pop Up Smart. They're very professional. I use it for months. And as much advertising and branding as you could do, some of the best type of advertising you can get is having a very 5-star review from a verified user. You can see here, there's a bunch of testimonials focus on customers instead of being tangled into enterprise level customer support software. And as you can see here, it's just a really nice way to show off who's using your product and various ways of how it works too. Cool. So, does everyone kind of get what testimonials are? Is anyone a bit confused on them, or does this make a bit of sense about what we're doing here?
No, it was clear.
That was clear.
I
Awesome.
just, yeah, I was thinking about the Google reviews,
Yep.
um, and especially how you respond to, especially the bad reviews, and try to offer remedy so they can either change the review or take down the bad reviews for you. So can you elaborate
Sure.
on that?
Absolutely. Let me pull up an example really quick. What is it? Wonder if I can get. These guys are really good. Okay. So this is a small app on this Google Fit, and as you can see, they have an extremely high amount. Yeah, it's a great one, right? So handling negative reviews. There's a very large amount of reviews here. There's a ton of 5-star ones, and then I'm trying to see if I think I could sort these by. There we go. So this is actually a prime example of how you can handle a bad review here as a business. So as you can see here, there's a few 1 stars and 3 stars. A few of these aren't responded to because they were just made yesterday. But as you can see here, this guy says that his app is broken and he likes having all his activity grouped together. And then he says here it worked perfectly, and now hard parts are all over the place. Last week did an activity for 82 and so forth. Anyway, he's talking a bit about why this app is broken and what's happening. And as you can see here, because Google is kind of like a very large company, so that they won't mind if they have a negative review, they responded to this guy specifically saying to use the send feedback, which isn't a good way to respond to a review. Yeah, sure. And essentially, what you want to do is if you're monitoring your product, okay, and you see some bad reviews, what you could do is respond to the review. Responding to the review, of course, not being like aggressive back or anything, that's good. But you could say stuff like, very sorry that the app isn't working okay. We are currently working on a fix, and then we are going to push it out. What you could say here, let me see here. Let me pull up another example. Great. And here's another one. If you have a review like this one, sometimes let's see here. Sometimes if you have like a lot of products and customers, you're just going to direct them to let's see here, direct them to customer satisfaction thing. But if you're kind of a more yes, let's see here. As you can see here, I'm available to help improve your outcome, just as I'm committed to helping all my patients. And you can literally say to them, please let me know if there's anything I could do to help, if we can meet or anything like that as well. If you're building an app and people are complaining about how it looks or how it's working, you could tell them directly, like, oh, I need to, we're working on this, we'll respond. And then what you could do again is you respond to these reviews that are negative and then try to just continue the conversation with them. And the reason you want to do that is because it actually shows that you kind of care. And if people are more looking at 1-star reviews and see responses to them, they're going to kind of they're going to try and it's going to look a bit better from the customer's perspective about how to fix it. Google might not be the best example here. Wondering if there is, could be a step tracker. So let's find, here we go. Let's So this person is dubious about the accuracy of this fitness app when using the GPS function. And this fitness group responded, of course, they apologize, they understand the feelings, and then they actually speak about how they're monitoring the actual, how they are tracking the user. So they speak about how they're using a built in sensor, and then about how it might differ on different devices. And then what they say is, again, this is kind of like that call to action, right? So even inside of this review stuff, we're doing the same concept of making the customer do something still. Again, they're saying go to the profile feedback for more help, but they could also respond with just some fixes as well. So again, a great way to deal with negative reviews is to pretty much go ahead and respond to them in a positive manner, providing help and feedback for the customer and trying to solve their issue. One thing I will say though is that sometimes you might just get slammed with like a bot negative review, or sometimes people just randomly leave negative reviews. And if you know, like, it's kind of, I wonder if, let me pull up one more example here. It's easy. Let you in. Oh, humid. Great. So, if you are seeing reviews, there's a few ways you could check this as well, just because it is. Hi, Olivia. Welcome. Morning. Just because we are in 2021, and I want to make sure you guys don't get blindsided, is that there are bots out there. And there's a few ways you could tell if reviews are bots. If you get like 40 reviews in the span of like under an hour, like very quickly, and they all share the same language, and you pretty much have a vague or short review there, you might be able to assume that there's some type of bot going on. And if these reviews are bot reviews, you can go ahead and delete them. So you can always delete reviews as well. You don't want to mass delete negative reviews because that will show people that you're kind of hiding what's going on. So if you have a if you have a realistic negative review, I would say respond to them and make sure that they're doing okay. But sometimes you might just have a review that's like a bot or anything like that. Uh, oh, look at this one. So Donald Wilson, I thought I saw him on here as well. I thought we saw that guy earlier. So this guy might be a bot as well. Sometimes you might have weird language in a review that just doesn't sound right. So reviews will usually be by a real person who talks normally and stuff and will have an actual complaint. If you see a lot of reviews that are very short and to the point and don't make a lot of sense and they're negative fully, there might be some bot activity going on. But you can always look up what the examples of bot reviews are. But that's one way that you can deal with some negative reviews there. Does that help, my? Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
No, it was good. Thank
Perfect.
you.
No problem. Great. And Solomon, does that help a bit with the responding to negative reviews as well? And again, reviews and stuff like that. Once you get your, because I remember a while ago I tried selling stuff on Amazon, and sometimes you have, sometimes people are just a bit more very harsh on stuff as well. Um, for instance, I got a very bad review on there because there was a library. I bought a book that was secondhand like 3 years ago, and then I never checked it, the inside cover, but apparently there was a library stamp on it. And then the customer who bought that gave a bad review because they were concerned about the library stamp. So make sure that you're double checking everything upon your app or whatever you're building or releasing to the public, and ensuring that you can't don't give them a reason to give you a bad review. Essentially, great. Make sure that the testimonials that you show and show off are eye catching. Have a recent amount of them too. Don't use just one or two old ones. Keep updating them. Use pull quotes, eye catching short excerpts taken from a full testimonial. There's lots of different ways you can go about having these shown. But as we can see here, again, going back to our previous example, the testimonial that said I lost like 7 pounds, that's one way that you can show off a good way to attract more customers. Of course, be fully transparent with your customers, right? Tell them that you're going to publish their material online if they're going to give it. And then, of course, reciprocate with your relationships with your customers. If your customer writes a great review, make sure that you try to stay in contact with them. You can even respond to the review or the testimonial as well. But make sure that you keep the people who take the time to write the testimonial part of your business. Cool. There we go. So here's another example of a good testimonial. I bought these widgets for 3 years, unfailingly professional and high quality. Believe me, you won't find a finer widget in the north, right? So these guys are just speaking about how high quality and professional these widgets are. And of course, testimonials are let's see here. Testimonials are sometimes really hard to get, but what I would say is that there's lots of different ways that you can go ahead and write a testimonial, and ask to get a testimonial written. You can always ask customers outright, please review our stuff. Again, going back to the book example, what I would do is if I was able to sell a book, I would put into the book a little piece of a business, or not a business card, but I did something along the lines of going to Vistaprint. Great. And while I was in Vistaprint here, I did a small brochure. Remember, a brochure was just a stagnant little item that people can review. Or maybe it wasn't even a brochure. It might have been something along just the lines of a single, just be one. Yeah, so essentially it wasn't a wedding invitation, but what I did is in every book I sold, I would attach a small little piece of paper like this inside the front cover of the book. And what it would be instructions to write a review for your product pretty much. So the customer, I had like 1,000 of these. So if the customer throws them out, they throw them out. If they want though, they might follow the instructions to write that review. So again, you can bulk buy these for very cheap. So it was only like an investment of like $20 to get 1,000 of them. And of course, if you can get 4 or 5 reviews out of the 1,000 that you get, then that's worth it too, right? You want to get those testimonials and reviews. So whatever you could do to get them is a great way to do it. I would say don't really feel awkward about talking to your customers. If you're going to be starting business and you're going to be engaging with people, you're going to need to be able to ask for what you want effectively. But if you ever feel that asking for testimonials this isn't in your forte, you could always get someone else to do it, or have your copywriter that we spoke about earlier do it for you too. Cool. So this is actually one of the quiz questions. So alert here, and it's also on the quiz review that we have. But again, when you're creating a piece of a copy or a content, there's 2 stages, which is that writing stage and the editing stage. Again, these stages are where you create your product in the writing stage, and then after you create and you're finished with it, you go ahead and go back and you edit. Make sure that they're separate. Write down all of your ideas and everything you want to say out first, and then go back and review it. Don't try to edit it in real time, as you might miss something or not develop it properly. Great. Again, editing is the process of just taking the first draft that you created and then constantly refining it until you get that solid quality product. Now, here's another idea is the checking of edits. Make sure that the item that you're writing makes sense. Does it do your job? You can reference those ideas that we talked about a bit. Remember those different strategies for writing the content. There's lots of different ways you can go about doing this. But make sure that you try to ask a few questions. Would it be easier to read this stuff if it was shorter? If there's more sentences or headings or stuff like that as well. So make sure you discuss all that before distributing the product. Make sure you get out of repetition and unnecessary words if you're writing a copy. Make sure you don't try to repeat the same idea to the customer. The customer is only going to be reading this like once, so they want to get all the aspects in it at the start. Make sure the tone and style that we discussed determining is good, and then have a compelling title. Great. So now again, this is a very good idea. Excuse me. Sorry, buddy. But one thing that sometimes we forget to do is focus on what the customer wants. So let's just say that recently you're trying to sell more copies of a new product that you created. And in order to get your name and the product out there a bit more, you started doing some volunteer work or you started doing some community work. If you're writing a copy, sometimes, if you start talking a bit about all the good stuff you're doing, the product and the service that you're trying to offer is buried underneath that stuff. So every time that you're trying to write a copy, make sure that your product or your service is always put at the top to ensure that the customer knows what you're talking about. And then, of course, after you do that, you can go ahead and then focus on the, let's see here, focus on stuff that your business does or what your business is about. Always be critical. Don't be too nice to yourself. If you're writing these things, you want to make sure that the product that you're getting across and the writing that you use is effective and makes sense. So make sure that you don't let yourself off the hook too easily. Make sure you be critical. And again, um, let's see here. Make sure that you edit properly, and then always get a second pair of eyes, I would say, just to ensure that you have what you want discussed there. Always review with others too. Sometimes reviewing stuff by yourself is a bit of an issue because you get very hyper focused and then you forget some issues that might occur. Great. Always use the spell checker. Print out a copy. I found that you sometimes can find mistakes a bit easier if it's printed out. Always take a break from your work. Sometimes, again, if you get kind of into that tunnel vision, you're going to miss out on a few mistakes that happen. See here. And of course, with your error spotting, always read out your work. So printing out your work and then reading it aloud would be very good as well. Make sure you use Google to look up your proper spelling. And then, of course, review how to fix these errors in different ways. I never saw this one before, but you can read your copy backward. That might be a bit confusing, though, but that's probably a good way to check for spelling mistakes. Spelling mistakes, I don't think, are hard to check nowadays with the amount of spell checking that's out there. The only problem is the sentence structure, so make sure that you use tools like Grammarly. I'm not advertising. I sound like I'm advertising now too. But there's tools out there like Grammarly that do your checking for you. There's also just word sentence structure online. You can copy and paste. Scrib ENS has a grammar check. So what this means is that it's not going to just check for spelling mistakes. It's also going to check for proper comma placement. See here, in a letter and email, a comma should be sent after the greeting. So this is an example, and this is all saved online. So I can just copy and paste whatever I'm typing into here and then get the new type of grammar check. Great. Make sure you double check the grammar. And of course, there's a lot of aspects of the English language, but of course, just remember to use these online tools to check sentence structure and grammar. You guys have written very impressive pieces of text, so this isn't a bit thing I want to harp on, but make sure that you use all the resources available to you in order to determine if you wrote a proper piece of writing. Okay. I don't want to bore you guys with going through the English language. Okay. This one here, really quickly, effect and effect. These ones I actually mess up all the time as well. Again, just remember that effect is a verb, so that is describing an action and it's a part of the process. An effect is a noun, and that's an outcome. So the effect of greater investment, and then the poor call handling affects our reputation. So make sure that affects with the A is the verb, and effect with the E is the noun. Great. Man, they have a bunch of them here. Okay. Synonyms are another great way to give words that are the same meaning. Make sure that you use these a lot. And what you can do is online, if you just go into Google, you could do stuff like synonym checker. Or you could just type in synonym for well made, something like this. And then if you go into thesaurus.com, you can see other words for well made: durable, dependable, flawless, reliable, sturdy, and solid. And all of these are inside of here. If you look up good, these are all words that mean the same thing as good that you can use to replace items inside of your copy. And if you go to favorable, you'll see that there's even more for favorable, benevolent, and you can get pretty deep into here. And then you can find words that you might not have known before. But essentially, like for magnanimous is forgiving and kind. And these are lots of different ways that you can do this. All right. So what I want to speak about here is how you can come up with more ideas using an idea factory. So always make sure that you're looking around at the content and data around you. Look up from your day-to-day work tasks to see the ideas. This one is a very weird bullet point, but essentially what it is saying is take some time away from your regular work to see new ideas. And this is on the quiz, so make sure that you remember this guy here. Make sure that you remember that you need to look around outside of your work to get those ideas. Find inspiration in your customers' reviews or what they're saying, and then follow other great content generators to see what they're doing too. Great. So global business, here's another thing, is that if you're trying to figure out a way to expand outside of maybe the US or your immediate area, you will need to figure out a way to get all your web copies and all your information and language into a different language as well. Make sure that you have reputable translation agencies that have native speakers and ensuring that they know that they're transferring it properly. Now, we spoke a bit about having a copywriter earlier, but what I wanted to quickly discuss is what is a copywriter and what do they do? Professional copywriter in general will save you lots of time. They are essentially employed to create highly effective copies quickly, and they are concentrating on how the words and items are used to make an effective copy. You will need to brief them on what essentially what you want. So just tell them everything like, this is what my business is. These are the taglines that I came up with. These are all my materials. And then once you give all that to them, they can focus on creating the content because that's what they're good for. A good copywriter will be skilled at delivering all these guys down here about getting the attention, creating interest and desire, qualifying that interest and desire with evidence, and then, of course, ensuring that the call to action at the end of your copy is well made and proper for the customer. These are items that you need to show off to your copywriter, but you need to make sure that they have a big view of what your business and product is. They have aims, so what do you want them to get for you? They have propositions of what's being sold. They have a time scale, so they know the time frame of what they're supposed to be done with. And then they have that certain style. So make sure that you tell the copywriter what the tone and style you want is, and then drill that down into them. And one more word about design is that let's see here. Sometimes not everyone should be a digital designer, but make sure that the impressions that you create are crucial and that you have reviews on whatever you create to ensure that it looks good as well. The design that you create needs to tell the viewer about the professionalism you have, the area of your expertise, and then why you care about the customer. And of course, there's various different types of designs, but make sure again, even with visual designs and all these copyright and tools, to just get another pair of eyes to review it and ensure that you know what you're doing. Cool. So again, these slides were a bit very broad and conceptual. The social media slides from last week were a bit more like specific. Does anyone have any concerns or questions on these guys? Or does this kind of make some sense?
Oh no, thank you.
Awesome. Great. Cool. So what I'll do is, because I know a few of us came in a bit